Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's class is going to be on the next set of Gideon the Ninth chapters 31 through 34. We're getting pretty close to the end here, so very close to the end of book 1, and then we'll go ahead and start book 2. And so much happens in this set of chapters. We've got lots of things going on, really important things, lots of changes, and information revealed. So I'm pretty excited to talk about today's set of chapters. But first, let's go ahead and start off with the trivia question as usual. Last week's answer was young adult for the His Dark Materials trilogy. It is considered a young adult reading level. And congratulations to everyone who got it right. That was Christian, Hester, Don't You Go Before I Do, Paul, Landon, Dan, and Troy. And thanks to everyone who participated in the question. As always, I had quite a few answers this week, and I appreciate everyone who gave it their best shot. If you are interested in doing the trivia question as well, I do change it weekly. Go ahead over to the blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net. It is on the right-hand side if you scroll down just a little bit on desktop. If you are on mobile, you'll have to scroll almost all the way down in order to see the question. So if you would like to play, see if you can know what the answer is, go ahead over there and maybe you will get it right. Okay. Thanks again to everyone who participated, and let's go ahead and get started in today's class. So let's go ahead and start off with our recap as always. There is so much stuff that happens in this set of chapters, so many important revelations, so many important things going on, new developments. So we're getting towards the end, but it seems like everything is just coming one right after another, and I'm not really sure how we're going to wrap up this novel. So let's go ahead and jump in right with the first big bang of the set of chapters, where Harrow takes Gideon into a salt water pool and decides to tell her the truth about the Ninth and about how the only way that she was born, and born as a necromancer, was that they had killed 200 children. The 200 children that had been killed, all wiped out just so that way Harrow was going to be guaranteed to be born as a necromancer. And she also ends up telling Gideon about how the locked tomb contains an enemy for the undying king. So there was supposed to be guarding it and making it so that that enemy would be sealed away forever, and that is what is in the locked tomb. Then the next day, after all of this, they end up meeting up with Palamedes and Camilla, and they end up picking the lock for the one room that Palamedes completed the quest for but did not get the key. Dulcinea had it and was then taken by Silas. So they end up breaking into that room by creating a duplicate key and looking around. And inside that room, they find proof that Teacher is not alive. He is another animated corpse. So definitely an interesting development there. And as they're in that room, and right after they do this discovery, they find that the fire alarm is going off, saying that they need to proceed to the exits. So they're running around looking for what the problem is. They head to Dulcinea's room and find Priest. The priest dead in the room, and it's obviously not Dulcinea's fault since she is still too weak in bed. So they go off hunting for Teacher and end up finding Teacher has been killed by Deuteros, I think is how you say her name, because she has killed him at the cost of her cavalier and the cost of herself as well, since she is deeply wounded, and lets them know that she has notified the undying king that he needs to come and rectify the situation on the first planet. So then after that, we have that we're informed that Abigail's body has been opened up and mutilated. So they go to check out her body and find that there is a space that has been pulled out of her that was used to house a key. and they end up going to find the door that key went to, the one that they knew had not been opened and didn't seem to have a that lock that they pulled out. So they go there and they find that Ianthe is there and has already killed her cavalier and has then absorbed his soul into her. And she believes that that means that now she is a lictor. I don't know for sure if that's the case, but she is convinced that now she has become a lictor because she has absorbed the soul of her cavalier and has been able to now use his soul and his knowledge as her own. Silas was with them. Silas and Kaloum come with them, and he decides that she needs to be stopped now that she has become an abomination. So he goes and attacks her and ends up, instead of defeating her, using his power with his cavalier, and his cavalier ends up being possessed, or whatever happens when the spirit is taken from the body. And he cannot call him back, so the possessed Kaloum ends up killing Silas, and Ianthe ends up killing Kaloum's body. And that's where we end it. Especially with Ianthe's sister being upset that she was not absorbed instead of the cavalier. So we've got quite a bit of things going on in these chapters. A lot of big items. So I think it's really good that we just did the 4 chapters, because there is already a lot to talk about, a lot of things that are revealed, a lot of big events that have happened. Definitely a very interesting set of chapters that has really changed the name of the game for this story. I'm curious, has any of you really seen any of this coming? Because for me, at least, I think that this is a sign of a good book and the sign of a good author, because I had no idea that any of this was going to be happening. I was already surprised that it kind of shifted into a bunch of people dying already, and it wasn't as much of an adventure novel. And then now we have it at this point where we have so many things revealed, so many things that have been changed because of the things that are revealed and because of the way that people have acted. So definitely a lot of surprises and definitely a lot of interesting things that have really shifted what we think of and how we think of different people and different events. Let's dive in with Harrow. So at the very beginning of these set of chapters, we get some pretty big information about Harrow and the situation that she has been in for her whole entire life. She has known from a very young age that the only reason that she was born and is born as a necromancer and born as the person that she is today, because her family decided they wanted to guarantee that she was a necromancer and killed 200 kids, all 200 kids of the Ninth House, off to use the power of their death in order to guarantee her becoming a necromancer. And we learn that she absolutely hates herself because of that. She sees herself as a monster, as an abomination that isn't actually worth any deaths, any of the 200 deaths. They weigh on her soul. And she, especially when Gideon asks if she thinks that she was worth it, she says no. Even after she talked, saying like, oh, if I make myself great or whatever, and then she's like, no, in the end, it doesn't matter what I do. I will never have been worth 200 deaths. And she even considered suicide as a kid. Before she went into the locked tomb, she was debating that if it wasn't worth the deaths that she was the one that they were for, or the cause, I guess, in many ways, that she was just gonna abandon it all and just walk and walk and walk until she couldn't do it anymore. So this is very interesting in the fact that not only did we learn a whole bunch of stuff that we didn't know before, and it really skews our perception of her. But that's the interesting thing, is that nothing has actually changed about Harrow. It's only the change is that our perception about Harrow. So for me, reading, it's like, oh my gosh, Harrow is like completely opposite of what I expected, completely opposite of what I think she is. She's, you know, been all this terrible person, somebody that I don't even know if I like, somebody who has been on the verge of being kind of nice to Gideon and kind of not, and so kind of growing on me, and yet at the same time just thinking how terrible of a person she is. And the second I learn all of this stuff, and even the second Gideon learns all of this stuff, it's like your whole outlook on her is just changed, because you understand a lot more about who she is, why she is the way that she is. I mean, we even find out that the only reason that she treated Gideon so terribly is because she was so upset with herself and so upset that she was alive, that she turns on Gideon and decides to treat her so terribly that Gideon will wish that she is dead, so that way she doesn't feel, so that way Harrow doesn't feel the pain of living all by herself. So though, yes, she does not handle it well, though, yes, that is still not a good thing that she did, the perception of it as a reader completely changes, because it is no longer just that she is an evil person that likes to see people tortured and likes to cause pain and suffering. It is because she is in pain and suffering, and that she is lashing out and doing something to somebody else to try and make herself feel better. And that is a very human reaction to have. I mean, a lot of times, you know, bullies in our society are usually being mean to others in order to make themselves feel better, or because they were bullied and they want to reaffirm that they have control over their lives. So this is a very human reaction that Harrow has had in the way that she's treated Gideon. And we can see now that we can see her clearly that this has been so hard on her. Her whole life has been hard on her. And that she didn't even want to live at 10 years old. She didn't think that she was worth it. She didn't want to bear the burden of those 200 deaths on her shoulders anymore. And it's amazing that really Harrow is the same exact character that she was from page 1, but just with the knowledge of why she did the things that she did and where she's coming from, it's suddenly like this character is completely different. At least in my eyes, she feels like a brand new character. Someone who I'm starting to finally understand, somebody who I'm finally feeling like I can connect to, and to see where she's coming from, and I can understand why she's all over the place, why sometimes she's has these moments of niceness and how she has these moments of terribleness, and why she is searching so hard to become a lictor, and the fact that she feels like, though it still will not be worth it, at least if she does something with her life to try and help the Ninth and to try and help rebuild that reputation and become somebody great, that then maybe it can be the most worth it that she can be. So she's coming from actually an extremely selfless place, actually, for this motivation, is because she wants to try and make it so that way the death that her parents caused, that was inexcusable, to be worth something. Whatever she can make it worth, even though it will never be enough, that she's going to try and do the best that she can to make it as worth it as she can. So, completely different light that you... She is actually a very caring, very down-to-earth person. She actually has a lot of compassion for the 200 that was killed. So, though she has treated Gideon terribly and she has had a lot of hard times, we can finally now see her in the reality, and Gideon can actually see her in the reality that she actually is, and the struggles that she actually is bearing. So it's very, very interesting to have this change, to feel like you know a character so much and to know that she is just a mean person, or at least to think that she is just a mean person, and just to see where it's coming from and how much that reality shapes the perception of other characters like Gideon, because then she's the only one that knows right now, as well as us as a reader. It really shapes the way things go. Now that you see the big picture, you can finally look at it a fully different angle, and it really changes who Harrow is, even if she actually hasn't changed herself. She's been the same person this whole time, and we are just given a different view that then sees us as a change. So it's very much a very interesting progression for her to be a kind of a very 180 shift that's all in the eyes of us. It's not actually her changing in any way, shape, or form. It's really just how we are viewing her and the lens that we are viewing her with. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the ninth house. Because so far throughout this entire book, we've had only a little bit of information about the ninth house. We know that there's the locked tomb there that you're not supposed to go in. We know that they are segregated from the rest of the houses, that nobody really likes them. They're very much looked down upon and treated harshly. Nobody trusted the House of the Ninth. We know that they're much more strict on certain rules and things like that. So we have like these little bits and pieces. Obviously, we know that when Gideon was living there, they treated her terribly. But we're starting to see now a lot more information about the ninth from this section too. So Harrow tells Gideon everything about her, as well as the whole point of the ninth's existence. This house is so alienated, we find out, because they weren't supposed to exist. The ninth house was not supposed to be a house. It was supposed to just be the locked tomb that nobody could go in, and the people who were supposed to guard it were going to be inside the tomb, and I'm assuming they were going to just die there and not pass anything on. They were just going to be locked in that tomb to die with the locked enemy. So this house is so frowned upon, even though nobody really knows why, but there's a prejudice because that house was not at first intended to exist. And we do know that they are the guardians of this locked tomb. And that locked tomb holds some woman. We don't know exactly who she is or why she is the enemy of the King Undying, but she is the enemy of the King Undying, and their job is to never open that door and never risk letting that enemy, whoever she is, to be released and to be able to kill or attack the Undying King. So there's more to the ninth than originally expected. And we kind of get a sense now of why there's such hostilities between the ninth and the other houses and why they're so different. For example, like the beginning, we knew that they had different prayers. They, very much dressed differently. They're supposed to have those vow of silence, that kind of thing. That was all looked upon as very odd and weird and segregated and different from everybody else. And that's because they weren't really intended to become a house themselves. So it's very, very interesting, especially since, Harrow herself has gone into the tomb and looked, and nobody else has done that before. At least nobody knew since the people who sealed the door. I don't think, from what I've understood, is there was very few people who really remembered why they were supposed to be segregated. It's more of just it passed on a hatred toward them. But we do know that there was one reference, I believe it was from Silas, that said that he did remember that the ninth house was not supposed to exist in the first place. So I'm not sure exactly how many other houses really remember that the locked tomb is there, or if it's more of a ninth secret with only a few remembering exactly what the ninth is supposed to be doing, or what the ninth house was supposed to do when they were first created. And we also now understand, because of this, about the Ninth's motivation. So we understand why Harrow's parents demanded to have a necromancer as their heir. They desperately needed one, that they did not have a necromancer child, and that was 100% mandatory in order to open the locked tomb. Though I do think it's interesting that they made the choice to be able to needing an heir that could open the tomb, but you're never supposed to open the tomb. So I think it's very interesting that they needed a child to pass on the gifts in order to be able to open that tomb, and yet once it was opened and Harrow looked inside and saw exactly what the tomb was guarding and the different spells or whatever it is that's in place, the wards to keep her out, they freaked out and they hung themselves because they figured that was them being unfaithful to the king undying. So I find it very, very interesting is that, did the people in the way past not lock themselves in because they wanted it to be able to have a way to release the enemy if they needed to, or were they 100% loyal? In which case, then why would you need to be able to open it? Wouldn't it be better if nobody could open it and nobody knew what was inside it? I think it's a very interesting concept, and that is one thing that I think we're still going to need to learn a little bit more about, possibly. But it does add some dynamic to the ninth house. And it does add dynamic to the fact that now that we know that Harrow was killed, that the kids are killed for Harrow, so she could be a necromancer, and that is part of, because they needed someone who could be passed down the responsibility of opening the locked tomb to who was also the leader of the ninth house. So we kind of are starting to see the ninth house's seriousness on how much their responsibility is on their shoulders, as well as why Harrow's parents decided to kill themselves. So it was not about Harrow specifically, it was more about what Harrow did and how they felt about it, and the shame that they felt for killing 200 of their kids. So it seemed like at the beginning that this ninth place is a terrible place, especially from Gideon's point of view, because she's tortured there and she's been alienated there, and it's just such a creepy place. But we can see now, as we're getting these revelations coming in, that really there are reasons behind why everything is so terrible and miserable, why, Harrow's parents committed suicide, why they are, guarding this locked tomb. So many things that we can see now that the ninth house is more serious, and the reason for their segregation is more serious than we were led originally to believe. And once again, the ninth house has changed in these chapters. The ninth house has become something new, something different, something that's not quite so cut and dry. And again, just like Harrow, this change comes from us as the reader and our perception of the ninth house based on the information that we have been given about it. It's now that we're just viewing it in a different area, in a different place, in order to see truly what the ninth house is and to make better judgments. But it does feel like the ninth house has changed and grown into something completely different, even if it is really just our perception of what we know and how we're going to make our judgments based on what we know about the house. So two main things really happen, is that we have a different view of Harrow and we have a different view of the ninth house. And so everything that we were questioning before and everything that we might have felt before is now changing and evolving because we have this new information that we then have to add to our knowledge base that we're making these judgments on. I would really love to hear your opinions about Harrow and the Ninth House, how your perception changed or possibly didn't change, if you guessed things, if you didn't guess things. I would really love to know what your personal transformation was in these chapters, because we have so much information for both the Harrow and the Ninth House thrown at us to really kind of fully see the picture of the things that we didn't know but were important before. Obviously Harrow, it's always been a main character that we really felt like we didn't know much about. The Ninth was always where Harrow and Gideon are from, and we didn't really know much about them other than, or the house in a whole, as what its job was or why there were so many problems between them and the other houses. And now those missing pieces are slowly being filled in. And at this point, we had quite a few pieces put in right at a time, really bursting out of what it was originally being grown to look like into this completely different thing. So please let me know your thoughts and your feelings. I would really, truly love to hear what you think of both of these topics. Now, I also want to talk about the corpses and the deaths in this book. There has been a lot of them, and they have quickly become the central part of this story, is that everyone's dying and they're trying to figure out why people are dying, and has moved away from just becoming a lector and trying to figure that portion out. It has quickly deteriorated into trying to figure out what's actually going on the first house. So we have, at least, especially in this set of chapters, we have kind of, and in the previous ones as well, really found out that like so many people are actually animated corpses and not real life people. Well, not real life people as in like they weren't real, but like they're dead and they're not actually alive anymore. The entire first house that they've been living with has either been made up of skeletons that are helping out, and the two people who were supposed to be actual real people are corpses that have been reanimated. So the teacher and the priest were designated to guard this place and to guard the transmission for talking to the King Undying. But we don't know who created him, other than possibly it being the King Undying or maybe a lector or something like that. We don't really know. But he was supposed to guard this place and to guard this transmission, and that is what his purpose is. That teacher was alive however long ago these transactions or these experiments were happening, and now he is just an animated corpse and has never been an actual living, breathing person for a long time. And we just adds to the fact that, is anybody really alive? We have had so much happening with the deaths, and people just, the people that we do know that were alive are just dwindling down and down and down. And the whole entire group that we start out with has just deteriorated, completely deteriorated, and it's caused a lot of the problems that we're having with this plot throughout the whole book so far, is that it came here for a goal and a mission, and then people started dying, and it's deteriorated and deteriorated and deteriorated for more and more deaths, more and more corpses that have never been alive in the first place, so it's very interesting to find all this happening, all these deteriorations happening, and so many people now dying, not because of a freaky monster that we had at the beginning, but now we just have people killing each other and just deaths happening because of the situation in general. That all started back when Abigail and Magnus died. So the fifth house died by still unknown means. We don't know who killed them. We don't know if it was that creature that was down there. We don't know if it was a targeted attack, what exactly it was, other than they do suspect that they had completed some kind of task down there and gained that key that was hidden in Abigail's side. So they start off and they're killed. And then as they're, figuring things out, trying to move forward, the fourth is killed by some crazy monster that selectively targeted the fourth house for whatever reason. And then we have the second house that died trying to send the communication, because everyone's dying, to the King Undying. So both of them died fighting Teacher and killing Teacher in the end, so they kind of wiped each other out. But they died because they are so afraid of the deaths that had already happened that they wanted to get help. So they died for that. So basically, the second house died because of the original attacks that they didn't understand. So they died trying to get help. Then we have the eighth house, which destroyed themselves because Silas attacked Ianthe and ended up corrupting his own cavalier, who then killed him. And then that cavalier was essentially dead already because his body was possessed and was not able to get back to himself. So Ianthe murdered his body, I guess you would say. I don't really think that she killed Callum because he was already possessed and not himself and not able to be revived into who he was. But she did at least, end him having any way of coming back ever again. So eighth basically destroyed themselves. The third, Ianthe, killed her own cavalier because she wanted to become a lictor and believed that now has made her a lictor, to have her cavalier combined inside of her. The seventh was half dead before they even got there. So they basically she just brought a body there. And then it basically seems like everyone is just self-destructing based on this test. And I don't know if it's because of this test, if that is what the actual test is to see if, after a couple deaths, if people just started going crazy. We don't know exactly what started the deaths back with Abigail and Magnus yet. We don't understand totally what's going on. And we don't understand everything. We don't even really understand why the fourth was targeted and that monster was created. But because of these couple of deaths that did actually occur, plus the one that was dead before he got there, added to the fear and the distrust and the deterioration of everybody else. I feel like everyone has slowly slipping until everyone's just going nuts and killing each other and dying for different reasons. And we're slowly seeing, in a lot of ways, it reminds me, I think I might have mentioned this before, but it still reminds me of the Agatha Christie novel, And Then There Was One, because you start off at a place that has a limited amount of people, and people start dying, and there's no way to tell who was the murderer or how they're dying, and you just see them dwindling off. And the only thing that's different is that, now we have actually people killing each other or doing things that involve killing others. So even with, for example, the second house, when they were doing the communication, they ended up dying trying to send that communication. And then they also killed the people that were already dead, or the guardians that had been created. So now even fewer is done, because now even the skeletons that were helping them are no longer animated to doing those kind of works by cooking and feeding them and helping them out. Teacher and the priest, the two that they had to rely on that had any knowledge whatsoever of this place, is now unable to complete their guardianship duties or to interact with them in any way. So the corpses and the deaths are very important to this story, and it seems to be piling up, and we're dwindling down to only a few people left. And even the seventh, though I do say half of them are dead, we do have the other half slowly dying themselves from sickness. So the death and the corpses seem to be a very important aspect of this book, and a very important aspect of the plot. And we're slowly just seeing everybody crumble, and we're going to see if anybody makes it to lictorhood. We really can't say even how you know that exists, because we don't even know how Ianthe might know that she is one or not. If that really is the answer, we can't say that. So it'll be interesting to see how everything finishes up, and if we will continue to see more corpses and more deaths, and to see how this original event has just spiraled and spiraled and spiraled and spiraled out of control to where we're at now. Now let's go ahead and finish up with our nitty gritty section. I have 3 different things I think we should keep in mind or kind of contemplate as we go through the end of this book. And the first thing that I think is really important for us is to consider the question of what exactly is Gideon? Not who exactly is Gideon, but what exactly is Gideon? We don't really know much about her background. She doesn't know much about her background. Nobody knows much about her background. We've been fed certain information about where she's supposed to be from, but I think that there is definitely something going on that we don't know about on who Gideon is, where she's from, and possibly what Gideon is versus who. Because she was given the same gas as all the other kids to be killed off in order to be used for fuel to be able to birth Harrow, and yet she didn't die. She breathed in these poisonous fumes for 10 full minutes without dying. So it makes everybody terrified of her, including Harrow's parents when they were alive, was completely terrified of her because she did not die. But to me, that says, obviously we didn't know much about her past to begin with, and we kind of want to know more. We've always had that, where we don't totally understand all of Gideon because we don't know much about her past and how she ended up there. But now it is for certain that there's definitely something big that we don't know or don't understand about Gideon. So I want to understand if she truly is human. I want to understand where she really came from, and I think these are going to be important questions to keep in mind. I don't know if we're going to find out in the end of this book. I might not find out until maybe the next book, but I do think that it is very important to keep that in mind, and to question everything that we have ever known about her, to see where that leads us. Second, I already kind of touched on it a little bit in the last section, but Ianthe thinks that she's a lector, and nobody really believes that that is her being lector now, but it's hard to say. We don't exactly know what the end result was supposed to be in order to become a lector, or who determined that, or how that status came to be. So is that how you become a lictor? And if so, will Harrow be willing to do that to Gideon? It's going to be very, very interesting. And I think it's very interesting as well that Coronabeth, her sister, wanted Ianthe to absorb her into her body instead of their cavalier, which is nuts, by the way, but Corona seems like both the twins seem kind of like they're nuts in different ways. So she's devastated that she didn't absorb her, but does this make her a lector? Does this mean anything? And Ianthe also did mention that Corona was not actually a necromancer, so what does that mean as well? I think we should keep in mind all of these little details and see if we find out in the next set of chapters exactly where things stand. And if that is becoming a lector, will Harrow follow through on that? And last but not least, they've called the Undying King, or the King Undying, to the first house. And we did have a comment about how he was never supposed to come back to the first, and that he's in danger, and that's bad, based on a comment that teacher mentioned. So why is he not supposed to come back? I mean, if we're going to talk about, the enemy that we know that's in the locked tomb, it's sealed and in the ninth house. It's not at the first house. So why is the king not supposed to come back to its own house? Because technically the King Undying is the head of the first house. So are we going to meet him in this book? Are we going to meet him? And if that is the case, that we do meet him, what is going to be the ramifications of meeting him? What is going to be the ramifications of him coming to the first house and that he hasn't been to in so long? And what's going to happen when they find out that his protectors were killed, for the first house protectors were killed. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see in these last couple of chapters what exactly is going to come and how we're going to wrap things up before moving on to book 2. Okay, that is everything for this set of chapters. So much happened in this story, in these few chapters, that really changed the game, and it really answers a bunch of questions and also brings up a lot of questions, that we just find that we know more, and yet we still don't know anything, because now that things have been changed, we find out that we have new questions that need to be answered. And I find it all very interesting, and I am looking forward to finding out how it ends and how we're going to transition into the second book. Please let me know if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything at all. I'd love to hear about it and have a discussion with you. I hope you are enjoying the book and enjoying these discussions about them. So please let me know. You can either comment down below, or if that's not the best place for you, you're welcome to contact me at Twitter, which is at fantasyfiction1. You're also welcome to contact me through Facebook, which is also /fantasyfiction1. I would love to hear from you guys, love to have a discussion with you guys, and I post all my stuff on there, so if you ever are wondering what's happening, you can see and follow on there. Ooh, sorry, my contact is bothering me. Okay, and if you're welcome to find more content from me on my blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net. There is a contact form on there as well if you want to contact me through there. But yes, if you want any kind of book reviews, book suggestions, other kinds of topics, I have tons of stuff over there as well. Go ahead and check it out if you're interested. You are also welcome to contact me as well as your fellow fantasy fiction fanatics on our Discord server. The link is going to be down below for you to be able to join. Hopefully you will join us on there. We've got quite a few people over there now. We're getting up there in numbers, over 30 people chatting and talking over there, and having a good time discussing fantasy fiction as well as other things that we have in common as well. So lots of different topics to talk about over there. Hopefully you'll join our community. We've got some fun games over there going on, as well as some good discussions, and I will be excited to see you there. You can also contact me there as well if you have anything else you'd like to talk about. I think that's it for today. Again, let me know what you think of this discussion, anything else you'd like to talk about. I'd be happy to hear about it. And I will see you guys in the next class. Bye.